who made it possible. Tonight we're celebrating our 20th anniversary and we're happy to have you with us. We have cake in the back of the room at least until it runs out. And I promise you I do not want to take leftover cake home. So please help me out.
Don't worry.
The League of Women Voters does not endorse candidates or political parties, but does encourage informed and active participation in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, influence public policy through education and advocacy, and do take stands on issues after study and consensus. One such issue is I-594 regarding gun safety. If you would like information on this issue from the League, please take one of our issue sheets on the table outside the door. If you're interested in learning about how you can help, I would encourage you to pick up some League information available at the back table. We've also, obtained comprehensive information on candidates and the election at Vote 411. We are also passing clipboards around for people to sign in. Please enter your contact information if you'd like to stay in touch with us and know about our various activities. Baskets are also being passed around for donations. These forms do cost us money, so feel free to drop a few dollars in the plate. Our format this evening. Each candidate will have an opening statement. There will then be time for questions from the floor, with all candidates for an office given an opportunity to answer the question with a 1-minute response. Remember that it is helpful to the candidates if the questions are brief, straightforward, and actual questions, not personal statements. The League encourages civil discourse and at all times expects all participants to be respectful and courteous. Our timer is Claire Kelm, who is sitting in the front row with 4 color-coded cards to help the candidates conform to tonight's time schedule. Hold them up as I go. A green start card shows as the candidate begins their presentation, followed by a yellow sign signaling they have 1 minute left.
So it's blue, Diane.
Okay, blue sign, 1 minute left. Somebody change that. Then a yellow-orange sign designates 30 seconds left. At the end of the presentation time, a red stop sign is shown. The candidates may finish a short sentence, but must stop at that point. This method helps to ensure that everyone is given equal time to participate. With us today are candidates for federal, state, and county offices. We have Tom recording the session here tonight, and we'll make the recording available on YouTube. No?
Yes, you might point out that your previous session on gun control is also available on YouTube.
Could everybody hear him?
No.
The previous League meeting on gun safety in September is also on YouTube, if you want to see that. Tonight, I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Steve Bowman, and he will begin the program.
Thank you. Thank you. Always good to turn. We have a full agenda tonight, so we'll get started. But one thing first, please turn off cell phones, anything else that beeps, squeaks, makes noises, and does all those other wonderful things. Thank you. Our first candidate race is the Legislative District 40 State Representative, position number 1. And with us tonight we have Christine Litton and Daniel Miller. Daniel? Where's Daniel? There's Daniel. Okay. Each of the candidates will have 5 minutes to make a presentation, and then we'll move to a question and answer period. And during the question and answer period, please consider asking a question. Not making a statement, just answer a question, and we'll try and get everybody in so that we can get as many questions and answers as possible. Thank you. And Christine Litton will begin.
Yep.
Either sitting down or up there, whichever you
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. It's always the best time when I get to come to the islands. I was talking to one of my colleagues before I got on the ferry, and I'm going to the islands like 3 days in a row, and they said, well, that's where we go on vacation, so good for you. But thanks for inviting me over. This is a great opportunity to talk to you and hear some of the dialogue about what's important to you in the islands, which is a big part of my district. I'm Christine Litton, and I am running for my third term in the state legislature. Was elected 4 years ago, and it has been an honor to serve you. I feel like building the relationships over in the islands has probably been one of the most things that I appreciated the most of relationships and getting to understand exactly what the islands. When we live in Anacortes, it is very distinct, but it is also very different than what you guys have over here, and you are very enriched with your environment. I want to talk a little bit about my background and let you know a little bit more about me. Many of you met me 4 years ago when I first ran, but I'm from the Midwest, grew up on a small farm there, and met and married my husband Mike, who is a native Washingtonian. So we moved back to Anacortes. We wanted to raise our 2 boys here. I have one son who lives in Houston and is gainfully employed, and that's the biggest accomplishment I feel like that we can have, that he's employed and not moving back in with us. And then my second son is a junior at Gonzaga. And it is what I'm all about is about education, and it's not just about my 2 boys. When I served on the Anacortes School Board, it was about the 4,000 children in that district. And now I really feel overwhelmed almost with the 1 million children in our state, and how do I build a great future for them? And through education is the most important thing, because then they can be more productive citizens, they can be better stewards of the environment, and be their civic responsibility. So the 4 committees that I serve on, typically we serve on 3 committees on Olympia, but we've had kind of a turnover, so I decided I would do 4, and it was a bit overwhelming. But I am vice chair of the Ag and Natural Resources Committee, and worked with many of the folks, particularly on Lopez Island, around some ag issues that needed to be resolved. I'm on the Education Committee, I'm on the Finance Committee, so that's the revenue side or the tax side of Olympia. And I'm also on the Appropriations Committee, which is the expense or the spending side. And I'm Deputy Majority Floor Leader. So I get to work with the Speaker of the House to decide what bills are going to come to the floor for a vote, preparing our caucus on those bills and what they understand, what they will do for the citizens of our state, but then also working across the aisle to make sure that they're fairly represented too. And I think that's the role that I'm the most proud of, is just how do I bring fairness to the process? How do I bring people to the table to express their opinions from across the state? Each of us are very unique in the districts that we represent and the people we represent, and we should be a reflection of you. But we can only do our job and be as good in our jobs as you help us be. So I have to do just a little shout out to the San Juan County Commissioners. I spent a great deal of time talking with Rick Hughes and Bob German and oh please, Jamie. Sorry, Jamie, I'm looking right at you. It's like way too many people. And to make sure that the island's needs are met. And whether it's transportation with the ferries, we always have a challenge with the ferries. They're on the board to be cut again. So my responsibility is to make sure that you guys are served well. You are net payers of taxes over here, so I want to make sure that you also are net receivers, and that I can help you build strong communities and strong families here in the islands. And I would appreciate your vote in the upcoming election. I look forward to our dialogue. Thank you very much.
Oh, hi, my name is Daniel Miller, and I'm very excited to be here tonight. I've had a lot of memories in the Grange Hall, from helping with Thanksgiving dinners, to movies that were put on here, to different Republican events, and actually even some Democrat events, and actually was at a Green Party event one time here. The Grange Hall has a lot of memories, and it's kind of fun to actually be back here in the Grange Hall to talk about my candidacy and Christine Litton's candidacy. My name is Daniel Miller. I'm a lifelong resident of Washington State, and I plan on being a lifelong resident of Washington State for years to come, but I have spent quite a bit of time in California, where I worked on medical malpractice issues, as well as trying to get better pay for home health care workers. My sister is a teacher up in Ferndale, and I had Grandma Phil's was a teacher in Castle Rock, and she was the kind of old school art teacher who could look at a painting and tell, kind of the value of it a little bit, which is really handy because one of the things I do is sell artwork. I own an antique store at 115 Nichols Street. I'm really excited to be here tonight. This campaign is really exciting. We've got a lot of forums up there in Bellingham. I hope I get a lot of questions on ferries, working for jobs in the local economy, maintaining freedom and liberty. Maintaining freedom and liberty really isn't spoken enough in the legislature, and of course careful spending. I'm just going to quickly add, please tell me when my time's up. Okay, fantastic. One of the ideas I have for creating jobs is trying to get a lot of movie companies that, there's a lot of movie production north of the border. If we could get some of those movie companies to film in the 40th District, that would create hundreds of jobs, if not thousands of jobs. The San Juans, Whatcom, and Skagit lend themselves to comedy. I shouldn't say it, but some horror movies, or suspense, or detective stories. The investments are strong in Olympia. But that doesn't mean that there aren't problems with things going on in Olympia. I need to take this opportunity to say on the ferry issue, I am one of the candidates who is opposed to the reservation system. The reservation system can trap people here for a few hours. It's a boondoggle that's costing so far $2 million. Who knows how much it'll cost once it gets done. Our Port Commissioner, Greg Gertel, wrote a fantastic article on the ferry reservation system. So if you are so inclined, please look at Greg Gertel's article on the ferry reservation system, which is upsetting a lot of the local community. Careful spending, that's something that I think everybody here can agree, whether you're Democrat or Republican, that we need careful spending in Olympia. If you're so kind and I make it to Olympia, I plan on working on a bipartisan approach. The carbon tax, that can be a problem. Taxes could be raised over the next few years $1.40 a gallon. And that's not good for students, that's not good for retired people, that's not good for business owners, that's not people who go to work every day, working hard, playing by the rules. That's not playing good for anybody. A little more about me personally, I happen to be a songwriter. I love songwriting. And I do have a lot of thoughts on, public lands that need to be talked about, whether it's DNR. There are a few problems with DNR that are coming down the pike. Anyway, I'm Daniel Miller. Please vote for me for state legislature. Thank you very much.
Take it over.
Thank you. And now we have an opportunity for questions. Any questions for either candidate? Yeah. And could you identify the candidate you're asking the question?
Mr. Miller, I'm interested to know what kind of tax breaks you would grant any kind of movie companies that come, because most venues that want movie companies give enormous tax breaks.
Right. We do need to bring in some tax breaks to get them down here. That's the only way to get the movie companies down here. Tax credits, they're called. Movies, believe it or not, I mean, my whole campaign is not about movies, but I do want to bring jobs to the 40th District, and there's also, production of manufacturing is another idea. But if we were able to bring some movie companies down here, it creates hundreds of jobs, if not thousands of jobs. So I just want to encourage them through tax breaks, yes.
Representative Linden, would you like to respond at all?
Oh, sorry about that.
Your left.
Yeah, I actually believe we have a tax break for the movie companies, the film companies, that we passed in 2010 or 2011. For me, I would prefer to look at restructuring our B&O tax structure in terms of a cap on probably 74% of our small businesses to encourage them in the communities. So I'm not sure I have a real strong opinion about film companies. For me, it is about jobs, but I think we have to be very, very careful with our tax preferences, and I've talked a lot about this. We have over 650 tax preferences on our books right now. The more people and the more businesses and large corporations that we exempt from our tax code means that you and I will have to pay more for the services that we get. We have really diminished our general fund state, and we're having trouble funding education. We're having trouble funding higher education, and I think adding more tax preferences, unless they really have job growth tied to it, I don't support it.
This is a question for both of you. Today there are approximately 5 large Panamax-sized tanker or cargo ships transiting through the San Juan Islands in and out of the straits. At full capacity, if all proposals in Canada and Washington State are granted, that'll increase to 35 large vessels transiting through our islands. What do each of you consider one of the most important things to do to ensure that oil spill safety standards are met and funded?
Yeah, this is an issue I hear a lot about over here. Number one, our emergency preparedness and the resources for that are important, but also I know some of you in the audience have talked about how do we get a rescue tug actually here on the islands. So that's something that I have committed to work on, and we're going to have a very challenging session this coming up, talking about the increased oil transportation. It's being raised across our state. First with the coal trains, and now of course with the oil, and both have safety implication to it, but in terms of many things, the environmental impacts to it, but then also if there were a catastrophic event on land, the one I worry about the most is on the water. So, you know, if you had to rank where you wanted oil, the water would be the last place I would want it. So I will commit to work on that, and I know that we all have some ideas on how to do that. I think that's the thing that you guys would benefit from the most.
So first let me say I'm going to try to do my best to answer the question. I'm extremely tired tonight. So far, between running my store and campaigning, I've been actually working 7 days a week. So hopefully that'll quit pretty soon, 7 days a week. I agree with Christine Litton that the tug, we do need a tug, a rescue tug. Possibly we can have more state inspections of the cargo ships that are on our side of the waters. Also, concerning the coal trains, we probably need some state inspections of the coal trains. Coal is not like oil. It will not cause as much damage as oil, but it is a concern. Okay, thank you.
The state Supreme Court issued a decision recently holding the legislature in contempt for failure to provide sufficient funds and for education. And the legislature's got it firmly in their court, so to speak, in the next legislative session. If you were elected, what would you do to help satisfy the mandate from the Supreme Court?
Okay, so the McCleary decision is going to take up a lot of time in the 2015 legislature. The Supreme Court did rule that we are mandated to provide funds. Every legislature there agrees it's going to be very tricky, it's very cumbersome and complicated. You have to work on a bipartisan approach to solve this problem. I'll give out one harebrained idea that I had to make more money for the state. Okay, is it time to quit? No. Oh, okay. So, cigarettes in Washington State have a tax of $3 per pack. In Los Angeles, it's only like $1 a pack. Maybe we could take $1 from each pack of cigarettes and put in a special dedicated fund. But I'm also thinking, I thought the lottery was supposed to be in a dedicated fund. So I don't know what happened to the lottery, the money to the lottery. I guess a lot of it's in the...
Yeah, the lottery money, we actually changed last session, and it does go to education. So the numbers are astronomical that are coming at us recently from the Supreme Court, not just the McCleary decision, which we think will be about $4 billion over the next 4 years. So about $2 billion we need to address in this coming legislative session. We, in the legislature, pass a 2-year balanced budget. That is something that's a little bit unique for our state and compared to the feds. And we also have to have a 4-year outlook, is what is called a balanced budget. We know that we have the McCleary. We're going to have to look at revenue. We do not have a tax structure that is going to support the needs of our state. It's going to be a tough discussion. Will there be cuts? Probably. But since I've been in the legislature, we've cut over $12 billion, and I do not want to continue doing that. I think we have to look at a tax structure that's fair to everyone. We have to look at our tax loopholes, and people have to pay their fair share. We have too many people at the top that are not paying.
We have time for one more question, if there is one.
Yeah, for both folks, do you agree or disagree in general with the vast majority of climate scientists that there is a human acceleration of climate change? And as a legislator in the state, what would you do to address the future for this region?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually do. I think the International Panel on Climate Change, their report from July, from 120 nations and 3,500 experts, scientists, have within a probability of, is it 85 to 95% that humankind is playing an impact on climate change? I believe that we are. I think that people need to pay when they pollute, and that's going to be a tough discussion. I don't want to have, I think it's an emotional discussion for many people. I think it's going to be a tough one. I'm not sure what the answer is. I know there's a lot of talk about carbon tax, cap and trade, but there's a lot of problems. I know that the EU just came back with some problems with their cap and trade program. So, but I think industries and people that pollute need to pay. And otherwise you and I will not be able to pass off a future for our kids that's better than ours. We have some environmental cleanup to do, and we actually have to reverse the trend.
Thank you for the question. I don't want to lose any votes, but apparently, there does appear to be some climate change, but there's a debate on what's causing the climate change. Is it man-made, or is it on purpose or not on purpose? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. It's complicated. And there's a lot of fraud in the climate change arena also. And I just have to say that I don't support the carbon tax, which will raise the gas tax by $140. $1.40 a gallon. We just can't afford it. And there's a lot of, shenanigans in the climate change arena. So I'm sure you're all smart people. You all know that they're, do a lot of reading and stuff, but there are a lot of shenanigans in the climate change arena. I think that people like Kevin Ranger, who wants thank you.
All right, that will conclude our presentations and questions from Christine Litton and Daniel Miller.
Do we give a closing statement? Or?
No, you do not.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Our next two candidates are Representative Rick Larson and his opponent, B.J. Guillot. If they could please come forward.
The light is on, just don't turn it on.
Similar to our last presentations, each of the gentlemen will have 5 minutes for an opening presentation, and then we'll have 10 minutes for question and answers from the audience. And Representative Larson, please go first.
Well, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to be here today and share in our democratic process. I look forward to the questions. I want to start off by just reminding folks of who I am. Rick Larson. I'm running for Congress, and I would like your vote. I was born and raised in Arlington, Washington, and I'm one of 8 kids. Mom and Dad worked very hard. They instilled in us the value of hard work, of giving back to our community, of looking out for others. And I'd like to think that my wife and I are doing the same for our sons. I know that at least my wife is. I'd like to be part of that as well. But more importantly than that, I think you look at my parents' background. My dad was a lineman for the Snohomish County PUD for a long time, a foreman. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. And they really worked hard to get all 8 of us in a position of success. And that's a legacy that I think anyone would like to repeat. And those values drive me in the work I do in Congress. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that I think are important in the election and in the future of this country. If you look at the unemployment rate here in San Juan County, you'll see that it's actually lower than it was a year ago at this time, but it's actually much higher than it was before the recession hit this country. So the recovery is in place, but the recovery is not spreading the benefits of the recovery to everybody. And a lot of people are still feeling the impacts of the recession. So what can we do about that? One thing we can do, ought to do, is raise the federal minimum wage. The existing federal minimum wage right now is at an inflation level of about where it was about the time I was born in 1965. And that means the value of the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage, is that low. And it's not a livable wage at all. So I think in Congress we need to raise the federal minimum wage. We also need to be sure people are getting back to work, doing the things that we need to have done in this country. And I'm on the Transportation Committee, and one of the big things we can do is pass a long-term and very robust transportation bill that puts people back to work in repairing and building our roads, our bridges, our highways, our transit systems, our ferry systems. And I'm in a position to do that. With Patty Murray, Senator Murray, I've written the last 2 versions of the ferry program at the federal level that brings dollars back to Washington State, helps deal with terminal construction as well as some parts of ferry construction, not all parts of ferry construction. We also, I think it's important to note, we have a great place to live around here in the Pacific Northwest, and I've done a lot to protect Washington State's environment. I want to thank everyone who allowed me to work with you last year to get the National Monument designation for the Bureau of Land Management lands here, about 1,000 acres here in San Juan County, and to get the president to designate that as a national monument. It was a lot of work. These things don't happen overnight, but a lot of local folks stuck with me, and I stuck with them to make that happen. And that's just one example of the work I've done on the environment. I've voted to create a cap-and-trade system. Almost lost an election over that in 2010, but I thought it was the right thing to do to try to regulate greenhouse gases in this country. I've also voted to create and increase the federal tax credits that we use to invest in renewable energy like wind and solar, as well as to increase the federal tax credit that folks are using all over the country to buy electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. So there's a lot of work left to do on the environment as well. Third, I want to talk about protecting Social Security and Medicare. It's very important that we do that. Social Security is an important part of retirement for a lot of people. For some people, it's 100% of their retirement. It's important we don't do anything to undermine Social Security. In fact, we need to strengthen Social Security. And that's why I support a provision, H.R. 3118, to scrap the cap on Social Security, the tax cap on income that funds the Social Security program. This is the way to increase the long-term viability of Social Security. And finally, I'll just end on this note about bipartisanship. I didn't come here today to tell you that bipartisanship is flourishing in Washington, D.C. You wouldn't believe me if I did. But I don't want to underplay some of the work that I've been doing as well, working with a congressman from Alaska on the Arctic to address the issues of the environment and economics and national security in the Arctic. Or a congressman, Republican from New Jersey, who's the chairman of the aviation subcommittee, and working with him on a long-term aviation bill. Now, you're not going to read about this stuff because it's pretty non-controversial. You only read about the controversial partisanship. You won't read about the non-controversial bipartisanship. But I'm involved in that, and because of that and other reasons, I hope you'll support my re-election to Congress. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks to everyone at the League of Women Voters here in Friday Harbor. My name is BJ Guillot. I'm pleased to be here and get the opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and to answer questions. So first I'll tell you a little bit about why am I in this race. Well, the story goes back to 1992. I was 18 years old. I had just graduated high school, and I was very excited to be able to vote for the very first time. For those of you who remember, that was the election in which you had George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Ross Perot running. It was that three-way presidential race. So I was studying everything I could about all three of those candidates. And one thing you might remember about that was one of the first times that a candidate used a big infomercial to talk about their campaign. Ross Perot ran 30-minute commercials on primetime TV, and he showed charts and graphs depicting the state of the economy. And one of those charts in particular that he showed haunted me. It was a chart titled Total Federal Debt. Now back then, it was about $4 trillion. But if you fast forward to today, about 22 years later, our national debt is closing in at $17.8 trillion. Right now, it's growing at the rate of about $2.4 billion every single day. Back when it was $4 trillion, that scared me. That's a lot of money. How are we ever going to pay it back? It's even worse now. So one thing I support is I want to see the federal government do like what a lot of state and local governments do. I want to see a balanced budget. Now, you got to be real about it. You can't just make a balanced budget appear overnight. It's got to be something that you can phase into. We've come close before. I think under Bill Clinton, we actually came to a point where we were generating a small surplus. So we know it's possible. We just need to get back to that level so that we can start generating those surpluses again to help pay down the debt. One of the other things that really got me passionate about the election this time around was all those revelations that came out last year about the NSA, about them snooping on our emails and phone calls and looking at the phone call metadata and email traffic, all that kind of stuff, our web traffic. I work in the IT industry, and that really irritated me. I didn't want to see the NSA doing that. I would like to see that stopped and stopped immediately. They're still looking at our phone call records. The president said he was going to stop it, and he asked Congress to stop it, and I think they are working on doing that. But it's been extended 3 times, 3 different 90-day periods. It's still going on. So we definitely need to stop that. And to Mr. Larson's credit, he did, in one of the recent bills, come up, try to vote against that, but it's still happening. So Rick talked a little bit about compromise, so I'll tell you a little bit about that too. So I am not one of those my way or the highway type of Republicans that you may hear about on TV. I view myself as a moderate. I want to see compromise. Compromise is not a dirty word. People tell me, oh, if you compromise, it makes you weak. I think that's hogwash. Compromise makes you strong. That's how you get things done in Washington. It's the way we used to do it, but for the past 10 years, it just hasn't been happening much. We need to get back to what it was in the past, where we could reach across the aisle and make things happen. So where's my common ground? What common ground do I have with the people on the other side of the aisle? Well, I believe in renewable energy. For example, I drive a Nissan Leaf, the electric car. My wife, she drives a Toyota Prius, a hybrid. We've had a hybrid since 2005, so we've been doing that for a long time. The Leaf's 2 years old. We just recently got solar panels in our house put in Marysville. It's a small 4.1 kilowatt system. So we're very excited about that, and we like to see that work. It's nice that you have companies in the 2nd District in Marysville and Bellingham that actually make those solar panels. So it's a great thing in the 2nd District to have. And one other thing I'll say, I do not support the coal trains and oil trains. I think that's a bad idea. It will also cause a lot of traffic problems. So as I said, I live in Marysville. Marysville has a lot of at-grade railroad crossings. And when those coal trains and oil trains come, potentially a mile long in some cases, it's possible in a worst-case situation that every single exit or every single entrance to get across Marysville to get to I-5 could be blocked at once. Just think about what that would do to public safety if an ambulance needs to cross and they have no other way to get there, or a police car. It's very bad. So one other thing I'll say, Rick mentioned transportation. Transportation infrastructure, it's a big issue. We've got things crumbling apart. We do need to do something about it. And how will we fund that? Well, what I would do is I would vote to stop funding all these wars that we're in. I think these wars they don't do any good. I want to see it stopped. And we do need a strong military to protect us defensively, but we don't need to be going on the offense so much. So thank you very much. I'm BJ Gio. I look forward to your questions.
Yeah, questions from the audience?
Hi, I have a question about higher education. I have several children who've gone to the college system in Washington State, and every year the tuition goes up 14%, and my salary seems to go down because of the increase also in healthcare. But how do you address the cost of college education in Washington State, the public education?
So that's a great question. Now, a lot of that is handled by the Washington State Legislature, not necessarily Congress. And one of the things that the Washington State Legislature did, I think it was this past year or last year, was to put a cap on that increase for, I think, 1 or 2 years. So the legislators that are in here, I don't know if they voted for that or not to keep the cap. I think they did, one of the ones that were just speaking. So that's a state thing. Now, from a federal perspective, one thing we need to look at is what to do about because it's costing a lot of money, and people are going to have a very hard time paying back all those student loans. The student loan debt, it's going through the roof right now, and you can't get rid of it either. I don't think you can declare bankruptcy and get rid of it. It stays with you. And we thought the housing bubble was bad. Just wait, soon we're going to have a student loan bubble. So we need to do something about that. And it's going to be a very important issue coming up. And I think we need to work with the state legislatures to see what we can do to keep these public universities costs down. But that is a state issue. So thank you.
Thanks. I think there's a lot we can do at the federal level. As a member of Congress, I've been doing it. First, I do want to thank Chris Litton for voting to limit to zero the tuition increase for 2 years. I appreciate it, my wife appreciates it, my 18-year-old son at the University of Washington appreciates it. I don't know what's going to happen next year though, so I'm lobbying as a citizen on that issue. But Pell Grants is the #1 source of federal financial aid, and I have voted to increase the maximum award that students can get to help defray the costs of education in this country. The challenge I have is that my friends on the other side of the aisle have passed budgets that would cut the #1 source of federal financial aid in Pell Grants. And so we have to keep fighting against that in order to help middle-class families all over the country, including here. Second, I voted to extend a education tax credit, so you get tax credit for qualified education expenses. Take that off your income tax. And finally, I supported the Bereaved Borrowers Act. If you have a person who, just quickly, if you have a loved one who signed your loan and they die, you're responsible for that loan. And you're 18 years old. We need to change that, and my Bereaved Borrowers Act will do that.
Question for Congressman Larson, and then a follow-up with BJ. In your role as Congressman, what issues have you addressed, or are you thinking should be addressed in terms of issues involving China, be it environment or the economy? And BJ, if you're elected, how would you respond to that in terms of your potential?
So China has 1.4 billion people, most of whom want to work, most of them who want to raise a family. And the United States has the technology and know-how to help China do just that. But we have challenges facing us with China. They close their borders to products that will help them deal with their serious environmental problems that U.S. companies make. They close their borders to financial know-how that will help them move away from an economic system that favors an elite instead of spreads the wealth to a lot of folks. I've been over to China several times. I can tell you one of the most serious issues they have, and we can't help them on this, is the vast corruption. that happens at the local and national level. We can't help them with it, but it's one of the number one issues facing that country if they ever want to step into the international community of nations and be a productive member.
So China has a lot of human rights issues right now. I remember reading stories in the newspaper, for example, where the company Foxconn that makes the Apple products like the iPhone and iPad, they keep all their workers on site in a compound so that they don't have to go pay for their own housing. They keep them in that compound, and what they have to do, if you haven't heard about this, is they put safety nets on the upper level floors there, because so many of those workers are trying to commit suicide because the working conditions are horrible. They're jumping out of their compound, and they have to put safety nets there to keep them from dying. I mean, it's that bad there. We've got to address these human rights issues. We need to do things. If China's, they are a partner with us, and there's a lot of the world economy based on that. But we need to make sure that they're a genuine partner and they're trying to do something about these problems we have. Otherwise, we're just going to see more things like that, and our companies are going to continue to be undercut by them. We need to be equal partners, not the way it is. Thank you.
Question?
So is our intervention in the Middle East, particularly to do with the Islamic State, a good idea for us to be involved in, from a humanitarian standpoint, from an unintended consequences standpoint, and from a financial standpoint?
This may be an unpopular answer, but I think it's completely the wrong thing to do to be involved over there right now. I don't support military action unless there is a threat that has actually happened, an attack that has happened either on American soil or at one of our military bases overseas, or potentially an embassy. I don't like this proactiveness where we go out and try to bomb places like that. I mean, yeah, it's costing a lot of money too. We're spending a lot of money on cruise missiles that are firing over there. I don't see it's really helping us. I mean, I heard on the radio today, for example, that all the airstrikes we're doing over there aren't really doing anything. They're going to, if they to do anything, they're going to need to put boots on the ground, and I don't support that either. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's just giving extra TV time and extra recruitment activities to people like ISIS and others. So I'm not supportive of that.
Thanks, and thanks for the question. I got to admit I am confused with my opponent's answer, because he said in the Whitby News Times that the president has the right to do what he's doing there. And I disagree with that. I don't believe the president has the right to do what he is doing there. I believe that Congress has the right to let the president know if he has the right to do what he's doing there. And I've called on Congress to both repeal the authorization of military force the president is using from 2001 and 2002, as well as to get Congress back into session to debate any new authorization to use military force. Because we and the public have the right to have that debate, and the president is precluding us from having that debate. I wish I could call Congress back into session. I'm not high enough on that ladder yet. But you deserve, Congress deserves, more importantly, you deserve a Congress that will have that debate.
Can I respond to that?
Not under their rules.
No, not under our rules, no.
I have a question for both candidates. Washington State has reformed its marijuana laws. The federal government has not. My question to you is this. If you were elected, would you reform or move to reform the federal government's marijuana laws, and if so, how?
Yeah, I was not a fan of the marijuana initiative in Washington State. I voted against it. I'm very clear about that. But I was on the back end of that election, if you will, as clear support in Washington State for Initiative 502. And so I'll take my signal from the direct democracy of the initiative and do what I can to ease Washington State's implementation relative to the federal government. I just don't think we have a choice, and I frankly don't think the federal government has much of a choice in helping Washington State and Colorado do that. I think the state of Maryland is moving forward on this. Washington, D.C. as a city is moving forward on this, and it's probably not the last. These aren't the last jurisdictions, last states in the country to move forward on reforming marijuana laws.
So I'll use a couple of seconds just to clarify something Mr. Larson brought up in the last question about what I said in the paper about the president and the force. So the president has, under the War Powers Act, the ability, if he believes there is an imminent threat to the United States, to command an operation and make it happen. That doesn't mean I have to support that. That's just what the law allows. So I said that the president was operating under the auspices of that law, so he can do it. Don't support it, and what we should do is put a vote out there to cut off funding to that operation. That would make it stop. So that's one. On the marijuana thing, so the people of the state of Washington passed that. Everyone who went to the polls voted or sent their ballot in and voted. I think it's important we keep the will of the people. What should be done at the federal level is to make it so that for states that have authorized it, we don't hold penalties against places that are trying to make that work, like banks and things. Marijuana dispensaries are having trouble getting bank accounts. Their bank accounts keep getting shut down because they're worried, the banks are worried about what happens at the federal level. So we need to fix that, but not authorize it in every state, just the ones that have done. Thank you.
We have time for one more question.
I'd like to hear your opinion on net neutrality.
Sure, so that's a great question. Being in the IT industry, it's something that's very close to my heart. I think net neutrality is very important. We need to, there shouldn't be any kind of fast lanes or slow lanes on the internet. It should be equal for all. I think that's very important for what we have in the country and for the world. So net neutrality is extremely important, and any companies that try to introduce these fast lanes or slow lanes, the FCC needs to not let that happen. So that's my answer there.
Thanks. Net neutrality is a motto only, because if you have broadband usage that is more than the broadband can take, you're going to have slowdowns in traffic. And so we can have the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, try to enforce net neutrality. The reality of the market may not allow that because it's so many people downloading Netflix at 8 p.m. And so the question becomes, how do you address that issue? How do you increase the investment in broadband so you don't get the slowdown in the infrastructure? We ought to be looking at the technological solutions to address the net neutrality issue, and not so much regulatory solutions, because those will be longer lasting. So with that, I want to thank you for coming out and listening to us, and I'd ask for your support for my campaign. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Representative Larson. Next will be our San Juan County Clerk race, and Nancy Vovoda and Joe White, please. So, for these, the races that will be coming next, the county races, each candidate will have 3 minutes to make a presentation, and then we'll also take 10 minutes from the audience. Same rules apply. Please ask a question, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, and both candidates can respond. And please.
My name is Joan White. I'm your elected county clerk. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I appreciate all of you being here. And I must say, public speaking has never been my forte, but I feel it's important at these forums to have a face-to-face conversation with you regarding the duties of the clerk's office. I've lived in Friday Harbor for 25 years, started out as a deputy clerk in 1994, and since elected in 2007 to serve as your county clerk, I've strived for my staff and me to improve on the ability for the citizens to be assisted with an efficient, user-friendly office. I've maintained the reliability and integrity of the Superior Court records with new precautionary methods in place, updated the clerk's website to improve citizens' access to the court, updated and implemented programs to assist pro se litigants, protected historical, archived, and current records utilizing secure digital technology, and have maintained the passport services applications. The clerk's office is the place where documents are filed, held, and stored, dating back to 1890. It's kind of a place you don't think you need until something occurs in your life and time is of the essence. The clerk's office is available and open to you, and I'm personally happy to answer your questions you may have, whether by phone, email, or in person. The clerk's office is your office of records, whether you are filing or researching, and we're ready, willing, and able to accommodate you. As we go forward to meet new challenges, I pledge to serve you with competence, efficiency, and enthusiasm. With your vote, I will continue advocating for these programs and improvements building upon past accomplishments. Thank you for your attention. Please vote for Joan White, County Clerk.
My name is Nancy Voivoda, and I am running for County Clerk. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to meet you, the voters. I have been an active member of this community for over 20 years. I am a past president of the American Legion Auxiliary, a former 4-H leader, and currently I am a board member of the Animal Protection Society. I have a diverse work history. I worked in the medical field as an occupational therapist. I moved from a hospital setting to the public schools, and then I became an educator. I went back to school and became an educator. That's when I moved to Friday Harbor. I was fortunate to help start the after-school program. It was a successful program for over 10 years and is currently run by the Island Rec. Before coming to the county 3 years ago, I was a store manager. I managed approximately 20 employees for over 8 years. From this work history, I have become a seasoned manager. Leading by example and listening to employees is a key component of being a good manager. I am well versed in the team approach and believe in becoming part of the team. The functions of the clerk's office are to serve the citizens of San Juan County, involved in the Superior Court system by receiving and processing court documents, assisting in court proceedings, maintaining court files, records, and exhibits, receiving fees, fines, and court-ordered monies, and dispersing funds. Serving the public in a courteous, professional, and timely manner is essential. Helping the public by making the office user-friendly and accessible to our public records while maintaining strict accountability is of extreme importance. There are transitions happening in our county this year. 2 departments, in fact, will have new head offices. We'll have a new assessor and a new treasurer. I would like to be part of that transition also. I believe that our clerk's office is very important to our county, and I plan on a long commitment to San Juan County. We also have a strong clerks association in our state, and I plan on becoming part of that team and making San Juan County's presence known. Networking with other county clerks can help to keep San Juan County up to date on local and state rules and statutes. Again, my name is Nancy Voivoda, and I'm running for county clerk, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to questions from the audience. Thank you.
You guys know what I care about. So I'm going to ask this question for the poor souls in Orcas, and particularly those that are hiring attorneys in Orcas who aren't just down the street from you guys like I am. What do you plan to do in the next 4 years to enhance the technology that's used by the clerk's office so that folks on Orcas don't have to come over here or use fax, which is not a very good system for e-filing, for getting documents back. Doesn't matter to me.
I've heard this question many times, Steve. Fortunately, we find no problems with fax filing. The only thing is that when opening a new case, we have to have the filing fee before we can open it. Really, that's the only way it can be done, unfortunately, unless the attorney wants to come over and open it or mail it. I don't see any way to change that at this time.
Well, that's something new for me. I know in our district court office, we do allow electronic filing for certain court documents. With some, we do have follow-up with the hard copies, so we'll have the signatures on them. I think this is something that we could work on to improve the ability for a attorney on Orcas or Lopez to be able to file without having to come here. I do agree, payment is the biggest blockage in that. We do not take credit cards in the office. It's a company we contract with, and there is all sorts of legalities there.
Do we have another question? No? Oh, okay. Nancy, thank you. John, thank you. And we'll now move to the San Juan County Sheriff race with Sheriff Rob No and Ron Krebs. You both come on up. Ron? Perhaps he's outside. We'll wait a moment. I'm sure he wants to be here. He was here, yes. There was a cycle. There's one. Okay. Yes, we are. So similar to our last presentations, each of the candidates will have 3 minutes to make a presentation, and then we'll move to a question and answer for as long as you'd like, up to about 10 minutes or so. And Sheriff Rob No will be first.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming this evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum. My name is Rob No. It's an honor and a privilege to be your sheriff. Since taking office in 2011, here are some of the highlights of what I have accomplished. With the budget, as county government has cut jobs in other departments, I have preserved the jobs of the deputies and the dispatchers that are critical to public safety. With training, I have made sure that all the deputies receive the same consistent, high-quality training by creating opportunities to train together and with our local public safety partners. Topics have included mental health crisis stabilization, active shooter, defensive tactics, DUI, and domestic violence. Field training has been formalized so that new deputies are required to demonstrate competency in the skills necessary to serve our communities. With technology, computers in patrol cars have been pretty standard for the past 30 years. Most of our cars now have that capability, allowing the deputies in the field to receive information, including photographs, in their cars. We've added in-car video to some of the patrol cars. We've gone to electronic reports that's increased the efficiency and eliminated redundancy. The dispatch center was recently renovated, upgrading the 911 system with a state-of-the-art IP phone system and replacing obsolete, failure-prone radio consoles. With grants, I've secured over $1.25 million in grants from the state and federal government. These funds have been used to purchase an all-weather public safety vessel outfitted for law enforcement, firefighting, rescue, and EMS missions anywhere in the county. These grants also support our marine programs, DUI emphasis patrols, the prescription drug take-back program, and have provided several training opportunities. With prevention, working with the San Juan Island Prevention Coalition, I've worked with many community partners, including our schools and other youth-serving organizations, to help reduce alcohol and drug abuse. With traffic safety, I've encouraged deputies to be proactive to address traffic safety issues, including speeding, safety belts, cell phones, and DUI. These efforts have resulted in an 80% reduction in traffic fatalities in San Juan County. 10 traffic deaths 2006 to 10, 1 since I took office in 2011. It is my sworn duty to ensure the safety and security of our islands, to be the guardian of the quality of life that we all cherish. That work is ongoing. I'm asking for your vote in November. Re-elect Rob No, San Juan County Sheriff. Thank you very much.
Rod?
Thanks. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is Ron Krebs, and I want to talk to you about three things today. I want to talk to you about community, I want to talk to you about leadership, and I want to talk to you about communication. First, community. This department will be restored back to a community-oriented department. Our department will not only work in this community, we're going to work with the community. We'll be accessible through regular town hall type meetings on every island, as well as having an open door policy for any member of the citizen who would like to come in and share their concerns. Second of all, leadership. Through solid leadership, I will implement clear, practical department policies that will not only guide the deputies and the employees of the Sheriff's Office, will let you, the community, know what to expect from us at the Sheriff's Office. Not only will it give direction to us as employees of the Sheriff's Office, it will let you know what level of service you can come to expect from us at the Sheriff's Office. And thirdly, lastly, communication. Effective communication is a necessity. I will work together with other departments and other agencies to build solid relationships so we can better serve you. I'll have an open door policy with my employees as well as the public, and together with a sound work ethic, good communication, and of course your help and support, the Sheriff's Office will be restored back to an agency that you can trust, and we'll create a department that we can all be proud of. So community, leadership, and communication. Vote for Ron Krebs for Sheriff for a positive change. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. And now we're open for questions from the audience.
I want to know if either of you support having an animal control officer, and if Sheriff No does, why hasn't it happened? Thanks.
On the issue of an animal control officer, typically crimes involving animals are something that is within the purview of the Sheriff's Office. And in the discussions that I've had with regard to an animal control officer, it would make sense perhaps to have one deputy trained to do those cases. The challenge then becomes on initiating those cases. We have staff on 3 different islands, and depending on where the calls come from, the initial response would still be from one of the patrol deputies to kind of get the ball rolling. If there's a case to be made behind that, then it could be referred to an animal control officer. I'm not adverse to creating someone, or to train someone into that capacity.
Thank you.
So we have 3 deputies who have recently retired, all of them with 30 years of law enforcement experience recently. All of them have stated that they would love to come back to the sheriff's office in some capacity or another. John Zerby's one, Scott Johansson's another, Steve Berethaler on Orcas Island is another one. These people not only have the experience of building cases, dealing with the prosecutors, and investigating crimes, they would be the perfect avenue to make them reserve deputies, which they would be amenable to, and let them take care of the animal control problems. So yeah, I'm absolutely all for an animal control officer. It just does not have to come from the full-time staff. We have other resources.
Other questions?
Sorry, Rob, but a follow-up to Sharon's question. The last part of the question was, if you're for it, why haven't you done it? And this has been an issue now for pretty much out front for close to a year, and nothing has happened. So what's the holdup if you're supportive of it?
Well, one of the concerns with that, or one of the challenges, is just looking back at the data as far as how many cases or how many calls we actually get about issues of animal abuse or animal neglect, animal cruelty cases, those kinds of things, that have been substantiated, and balancing that with the requirement. The animal control officer course is 2 weeks down at the academy. And so that's a pretty good chunk of time to commit someone to training, not just the cost of the class, but the cost of having that person gone for a couple of weeks and putting them up while they're down there. And so far, I haven't seen where there's really sufficient calls to justify that. Currently, okay.
Thank you. Other questions?
This question is for Sheriff No. Recently, except for a few abstainers, your entire Sheriff's Department, men and women who have worked with you for the last 4 years, who have most closely seen your management skills, your leadership style, and how you react in crisis and emergencies, voted unanimously to endorse your opponent, Deputy Ron Krebs, for sheriff. How did this happen?
Well, first off, just to kind of clarify your statement leading into the question, there were members of the guild that abstained from that vote, so it wasn't unanimous. But as I said previously, part of the challenge in the last 4 years has been being a change agent in kind of bringing about some change within the organization and the way we do business, and that has been quite different from what has been in the past. And change is inevitable, but oftentimes it's uncomfortable for some, sometimes it's painful, and it's not necessarily without missteps.
Thank you. There's a question over here.
Does Krebs get to respond at all?
Do you wish to respond?
Please.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of I guess the benefits of working with this agency on a day-to-day basis is the people that I work with get to see what they're getting with me. They know my leadership style, they know that I can be counted on. They know my dependability. They know how I operate under pressure. And we all talk, and they get to hear my ideas and my vision for this department. I think when it came down to the question and answer session that was put to both of us independently, they liked my answers better. And as a result, I got the endorsement. It was the first time in the history of this department that we've ever endorsed a sheriff's candidate. So it's something I'm proud of. And I have mutual respect with everybody I work with. And I think that's where it comes from, is mutual respect.
Me first, Joyce. For both candidates, I like your comments on the recent events in Ferguson, Missouri, please.
Before you answer, hold on a second. I think you need to be a bit more specific as to what the question is.
Yeah, thank you.
The police force in Ferguson, Missouri shot a black man who apparently had his hands up at the time, and there have been riots and an ongoing federal investigation into exactly what happened. And the police force was supplied with military equipment from the federal government, including strange-looking vehicles and all sorts of equipment which maybe local police forces don't need. Okay?
If I could condense that just a little bit further, perhaps. I think what is being asked is, do you wish to comment on the behavior of the police in the particular incident in Ferguson?
Okay.
So without knowing everything that happened, because certainly I was not there, all I know is what I've read in the papers. It's a very, very tragic event. And when events like that happen, I tend to look back on probably the leadership of the department. I look back on the training of the department. I look back at whether do they have good policies and guidelines to help mitigate instances like that. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants that to happen, and I pray to God that it never happens here. I can say that we will not have military vehicles in this department. We don't need military vehicles in this department. This is a small community. So.
I think with the situation in Ferguson, there are a number of ongoing investigations with regard to exactly what happened there. There's an awful lot of conflicting information that's out there in the public eye on that, conflicting witness accounts of what may have happened, and it's a little bit early to try and pass judgment, especially based solely on media reports from a distance. With regard to the issue of I guess the militarization of police, which seems to be kind of a current question or buzzword in the wake of Ferguson. There are, we do participate, we have participated in the 1033 program. We don't have any vehicles or vessels as a result of that, and it's not about militarization. We do small town law enforcement.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank you both for the job that you do. And I'd like to ask the both of you what your thoughts are and whether or not you think it's appropriate for 24-hour coverage, primarily here in San Juan Island.
As our population changes and as the circumstances in the islands evolve, there are circumstances where, certainly 24-hour coverage is necessary. And it's it's typically, well, it's a matter of resource allocation. We have, so many staff available to provide service, and it's always kind of a balancing act to try and best utilize personnel to give you, the taxpayer, kind of the biggest bang for the buck. When we need, we try and put the resources in the field when it's necessary, and at times we've done that to address specific issues and kind of get ahead of things.
Yeah, I think I probably couldn't have said it much better than that. The geographical location of this community, just the geography of our community, makes it pretty much impossible for 24-hour coverage. Lopez has 3 deputies. There's no way you can get 24-hour coverage on Lopez, and Orcas has 5. Our island, we could have 24-hour coverage, but then you start cutting back on shifts and you're having more and more deputies working alone. So when there are incidences like domestic violence cases, which happens quite often, they are some of the most dangerous cases we go on. We don't want our deputies going alone. Currently, we're not 24-hour coverage, and it seems to work. If there is a need to go to 24-hour coverage, absolutely, we certainly could until that need is taken care of. But without more staffing, we couldn't go to 24-hour coverage, unfortunately. Would I like to? Absolutely.
Well, since you just mentioned domestic violence, that's what I'd like to ask about. I'd like you each to say what steps that you would be taking going forward in strengthening the relationship with DVSAS and other partners in addressing both domestic violence and sexual assault.
Well, one of the things we just did for the first time since I've been here is went through a domestic violence training class. It was a class, an outstanding class, kind of prepares us a little bit, but just kind of scratches the tip of the surface, just scratches the surface. My plan is to bring those people back who just put on this class, because they have an entire academy, bring them back and get more in-depth in some of the training that we really need. And then working with DVSAS, it's a matter of, again, communication, effective communication, working with the other agencies like DVSAS to build a relationship. And that's what I would do, build a stronger relationship with DVSAS.
On the issue of domestic violence, as Ron mentioned, we just did an outstanding mandatory training class on domestic violence issues in cooperation with DVSAS, with Victim Services, with the Prosecutor's Office. It was mandatory training for all of the sworn staff of the Sheriff's Office to go through this training, which provided kind of a paradigm shift on the subject. And we brought in 2 nationally renowned speakers, experts in their field, that did just an absolutely fabulous job in giving us a number of new tools and strategies. And I totally agree that it would be money well spent and time well spent to continue down that road, try and get those instructors back and continue to build on that foundation.
We have time for one more question. Okay. Now we're not shy. Okay. Let's go back here. Yep.
Over the past couple of years, I've noticed a decrease in respect and support for our Sheriff's Department, sadly. And that will not be the fault of the deputies, but I believe leadership in this department. I'd like to know what kind of programs you plan to implement for increased accountability and leadership in our department.
Well, one of the things that I'll do right away is I'll do an employee evaluation. Then I will have continued employee evaluations every year, where you evaluate the employee on their performance based on sergeant's evaluations, peer evaluations, and then our evaluations. that is probably one of the best ways to raise the level of standard and hold people accountable for the performance in which they're doing. The other thing is quality control, whether it's quality control in report writing or quality control on the calls. It's as simple as picking up the phone, speaking with a victim, or speaking with somebody who needed the sheriff's office from time to time, and ask them what the experience was like. Ask them, was your problem resolved? Was it resolved in a manner that's okay with you? And if not, why not? And then retrain that deputy or the individuals who are involved in that call.
As far as a lot of the tools that were just mentioned, annual employee evaluations is something that has been happening, as well as setting forth expectations as far as performance and just what is expected of how the deputies especially spend their time in the field. And there is the accountability on handling calls there, and as far as how investigations are conducted, how reports are done, and that will continue, absolutely. It's a matter of kind of just reinforcing the expectations of conduct and performance, and providing the guidance and the feedback. And so that's an ongoing thing.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. No, Margaret. Just so you know, for those of you who had a question and couldn't get it in, we'll be performing again tomorrow night in Orcas and Thursday night in Lopez, so you're welcome to join us there. Next up is the San Juan County Treasurer, Rhonda Pedersen and Tony Fairquist. And Rhonda, if you would go first, I would appreciate it. And the same rules, 3 minutes for a presentation and then a flexible 10 minutes for question and answer.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting me here tonight, and thank you for everybody that's here this evening. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and what my career has been and why I believe that I'm the best candidate for the next county treasurer. My name is Rhonda Pedersen, and I'm running for San Juan County Treasurer. I've lived on San Juan County for 20 years and have raised 4 children in our community. I've been a volunteer firefighter. I volunteered at the elementary school, and I'm the current Kiwanis Treasurer. I have started in San Juan County 14 years ago. I started out in the health department where I worked for 6 months, and then I transferred to the auditor's office where I began in the Department of Licensing and recording, and I enjoyed working with the public there. After that, I was promoted to Junior District Accountant, where I worked there for about 3 years and was responsible for paying their bills, helping with monitoring their budget, and any state reporting issues that they would have for 23 junior taxing districts. After 3 years, I was promoted to Chief Accountant, which is my current position and has been for the past 7 years. My main responsibilities are the general ledger, maintaining all financial transactions that happen in the chart of accounts. That's including the junior districts and the school districts. I work very closely with the Treasurer's Office and, for example, monitoring their long-term debt, monitoring cash and investments on an ongoing basis, and I have worked hard to get the respect from San Juan County, and I feel that I work very closely with the Treasurer's Office. I know their systems, I know the chart of accounts, and I think that it would be a seamless transition from one treasurer to another. And I'd appreciate your vote in November. Vote Rhonda Peterson. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tony Ferquist. I am running for the San Juan County Treasurer, and I am the only business representative of the business community. I represent the private industry, and I have never run for any position before. I had never worked for the government, so this is my first time running for a public office. However, I have worked in banking for 30 years, and the treasurer's position is often known as the banker for the county. And like in the banking, what we do is we collect funds, like deposits, and the county treasurer collects funds. Also, we disperse the funds out as loans. The county disperses it to various agencies. We, unfortunately, sometimes we foreclose on properties, and that's what the county treasurer does also. And we invest excess funds, so the position is fairly similar. I've been very fortunate to work for a local community bank where service really is the key to success. The bank I work at has been very, very successful due to the emphasis for customer service. And this is what my plan would be, is emphasize taking care of the customer first. And the customers, of course, for the county include the general public, they include the other agencies of the government, includes the junior taxing districts. And a little bit about myself. I've been here for 23 years. My wife Lisa and I raised 5 children on the island. One is still at the house, the rest are gone. Hopefully some of them come back someday. I've been the treasurer for Kiwanis. I've been the treasurer for San Juan Soccer Association. I've been working as an enrichment teacher, teaching chess classes at the elementary school. I've done been in the church finance council, but what I really like to do is coach soccer. Done that for 22 years. Right now I have 13-year-old girls in my team, and that's been a challenge, but that's been a lot of fun. And for those soccer enthusiasts, we do have a game 2 week from on the 18th, home game here, right in Friday Harbor, doubleheader. And that's pretty much it. So thank you, and I would appreciate the vote.
Thank you, Bill. Questions from the audience? Really? Aha.
Question for both of you. Do you believe that it's important for the Treasurer's Department to be managed by an independently elected official? If so, why? If not, why? And would you be committed to maintaining the independent?
Well, that's a question that has come up before, and that's a separation of powers type of a thing. And I'm a strong believer. That's what my 8th grader, they're just studying in government. The genius of the United States government is the separation of powers, and that is, I would be very strong supporter of keeping a separate treasurer's office.
I agree with Tony. It has been brought up before at the council meetings, and I believe that we need the separate offices for the checks and balances. And I think that to combine offices with a treasurer and auditor, that it is, I think it would be a huge impact on the auditor's office. I've worked both the front counters in recording and in licensing. There's already long lines there, and I believe that adding another responsibility to the treasurer's or to the auditor's office would, and I don't know that the public would go for that. And it's ultimately up to the public. The council would decide on whether that would something that they would be considering, and then ultimately it comes back to the voters of whether they would want to do combining of the offices.
And another question?
Is that good?
Yes.
I don't know a thing about being a treasurer. I know how to run QuickBooks. Why, what am I looking for? Both of you have experience, you both have been Kiwanis treasurer, et cetera. Why would I vote for one of you over the other? What am I looking for as a voter?
I currently have governmental accounting experience. I've been with the county for 14 years. I understand the systems. I work closely with the treasurer. I understand their long-term debt. I keep track of the long-term debt currently right now. I also monitor the cash and investment process. And I just think that I have a huge experience already in governmental accounting and the government.
I think it's more of a philosophical question. I'm from the private industry, representing the banking side of the private industry, and I think either one of us, I know Rhonda a long time, and I think she'd make an excellent treasurer, but it's more of a philosophy, do you want private industry people coming to the government or not?
Another question? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Rhonda and Tom. So that you know, we now move to two different propositions. The first is the county levy lid lift replacement, and then the second is the EMS levy. And we'll have both pro and con speakers for each of those propositions. The first will be the levy lid lift, and Bob Jarman and Ed Holden will present pro for Bob and con for Ed. And Bob, you're first.
The mic's on, just don't shut it off. Okay.
I'm sorry?
Could you tell us what their names were?
Bob Jarman. Ed Colden.
Kilduff. Yep.
Sorry.
I'll say who I am when I come there.
Hey, thank you for coming out tonight, and I'm speaking on behalf of Proposition 1, which is the levy lid lift for certain funds that the county is funding. Proposition 1 will replace the 2009 levy lid lift, scheduled to expire next year. The San Juan County Council placed it on the ballot now to provide community and predictability to the budget process. The proposition will produce approximately the same amount of revenue as the current levy it replaces. It's designed where the funds will be allocated. The levy is currently, and if passed, be 20% of the general fund of our property tax revenue. County government is an arm of the state, and many services the county delivers are mandated by the state law. Most of the taxes we collect pay for mandated services and are specific used as the road department fund. The levy helps fund non-mandated functions and services provided by the county from its general fund, which adds a lot to the quality of life in our islands. We're not asking for more money. We are just asking to continue the levy to pay for the services you are already funding now. We can only raise property tax by 1%. We can't even keep up with inflation to fund our programs. If we need more money to operate these services, we need to ask the voters, which we are doing now, to fund these specific services. We have been looking at ways to be more efficient at all levels of our county government so that we can reduce these levies. If passed, the funds will be allocated as follows. Staffing and program support for senior services on the 3 main islands. Maintain and operate of the county parks. Support for the Washington Extension programs, the 4-H programs, master gardeners, and other volunteer and agricultural programs. Staffing and program support for the public health services. Support the work release program. Support the victim services. and provide funds for equipment and maintenance to Island Spill Association. If the county's financial picture changes in the next 5 years, this levy has a sunset clause. The levy can expire, or the voters at the time can re-decide again. We are asking the voters to approve this so we continue with the funding of the programs that we already have. I do have a brochure in the back that has a specific list of the programs that we're funding and the amounts that we're looking for. Also tonight, I heard other speakers talk about some of the things that we are funding. We are funding some of the oil spills.
Sorry.
I was getting on a roll, Ed.
I noticed.
Ed? This is Ed Kilduff.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. You know, I actually...
I should have looked up.
Yeah, well, you do well. I actually don't like using these. Can people hear me if I just speak? Okay, all right, I'll try. I talk with my hands, so anyway. What I'm going to do is just briefly read the campaign statement or the state ballot statement so that people, if you have any questions, you can ask it now. And also, I just want to say that it was prepared by myself. I'm from Lopez. I'm an environmental consultant. I've lived on Lopez on and off since about 1998. Steve Blamini, who's a San Juan Islander, he couldn't be here tonight because he's got some medical appointments he's got to go to. And Nick Jones, he's a shellfish farmer on Lopez, and so we're the three who prepared the anti-levy lift statement. So I'll read this, and to the extent that there are questions or I have time for other things, then we'll go into that. Everyone in San Juan County knows we are living in rough economic times. We see working families leaving the county, real estate languishing unsold, and businesses struggling or failing. Working Islanders have never been under greater pressure. County government, meanwhile, has continued to expand and spend on ever more bizarre priorities. Witness the pointless, outrageously expensive refit of Odland Park, that's on Lopez, you may not know about that, the surreal stormwater sump in East Sound, or the guardrail sprouting up on San Juan and Workus. You know, San Juan County, they want to make you believe that we are resource constrained, but the numbers don't tell that story. San Juan County spending is wildly out of step with other Washington counties. Our county spends about $2,249 per resident, according to the state data book, and that's about twice the Washington average. And neighboring Island County spends $653, and even King County spends $1,746. So we spend more per citizen than even King County. So everybody supports social services, parks, and roads, but we can't support spending at a level of 2 to 4 times the level of comparable counties. And high taxes hammer our working classes, force our old-timers and seniors to leave the county, and work to push our local businesses over the edge. That's basically our point. In 2009, if you go back and you read the letters in support of the levy lift, it was temporary, and the county has some fundamental structural problems when it comes to cost. You know, just one example is that the levy lift, or Initiative 747, which capped the increase in property taxes, allows 1% per year. But the labor agreements allow 3% per year in terms of increased salaries. So there's a 2% gap that has to be made up. And unless the economy is growing at a 2% increase every year, that's not going to be made up. So there's a fundamental structural problem with the county's costs. And giving the county more money won't fix that. They have to sit down and address those fundamental issues. You know, every sector of the economy since 2009 has shrunk except for government and utilities. And there's just been a tremendous rate of increase in taxes and spending. In the 2009 levy lift resolution, the cap for property taxes was $49 per thousand, then it went to $60. Sorry.
Thank you.
You were just getting on a roll.
I was just getting going.
Okay, so they're both on a roll. Anybody have any questions for the two on a roll? Are we with it?
This is addressed to Ed, and Bob probably has something to say. The county spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to do BAS, which is, now I forgot what BAS is.
Best
Available science, sorry. And in the end, ended up adopting the ready to off-the-shelf stuff from DOE. And a lot of it was because of you and the two other is one of the other people that you mentioned. How do you you justify that? And Bob, what do you have to say?
Well, I'm pleased you give me so much credit. I don't think I'm responsible for the county's budget increase. I don't think people really understand how much money the county gets. I mean, in 2009, the county budget was in the low $40 million range, $1 million per year. Now it's about 50. I mean, costs have increased 26% since then. The general fund has gone from about 13 to about 16. Grants have doubled. So the county isn't resource constrained. It's not short of money. It's just bad with the way it spends its money. And giving more money to the county isn't going to make it any more disciplined. You know, I had an old economics professor, Lester Throw, who used to complain about the Reagan administration and their spending policies. And he used to say that people don't all of a sudden develop fiscal restraint. It's just that the people getting the money finally say no. And that's when you develop fiscal restraint. So I think people think they're helping the county by giving them more money, but actually you help the county by making them figure out their fundamental problems.
Is there any way we can get him to answer the question that was asked, or is that not part of the process?
Maybe I can try again.
Wait a minute. Before we move completely out of control, I'll be more than happy to give you another opportunity to ask your question and see if you can get an answer, but let's cycle through the way we should.
So last year we ran a series of community roundtables, and the thing that we brought back from the community roundtables is there are some services that we do need to provide. Senior services, 4-H services, and all the ones that we're asking to extend the levy lid lift with, we'll continue running those programs. As far as the best available science and the money that went into the CAO, I think that's a totally different subject, and we could probably be here all night.
Okay. I agree with you about that.
Another question? Yep.
I'm confused, and this is an honest confusion. In 2000, was it 8 or 9 when we did
Nine,
nine?
yeah.
The economy was in the tank. If you know, our metric is how quickly it takes us to cross First Street in the summer, and it was pretty quick. This summer was not like that, and I'm talking to people who are saying that they've done real well and our tax receipts are up. Just why, how is this keeping the status quo versus adding to what is now a better economy? Do you understand my question?
Yeah. Sure. We have seen some improvement in our sales tax revenue. We've also seen a lot of improvement in our building industry. So the only way that we can increase from the Lyman initiative is to go 1% per year, and then also our new construction. It's hard to look out to predict what's going to happen next year and the year after that. We are asking to extend the levy lid lift so we have some predictability for the fluctuating economy, so that we can adjust to the economy.
You know, the 2009 levy lid lift doesn't expire until next year. So they're actually asking for it early. The county's never going to stop asking for temporary fixes, because that's the way they address all their problems, is with temporary fixes. So it's really, I kind of agree with you, it's really kind of hard to justify the levy lid lift given what's happened. There's that old Oscar Wilde quote, right? To ask for a temporary levy lid lift the first time around can be construed as misfortune, but to ask for it a second time looks like carelessness. I mean, it really isn't really kind of corresponding with the situation we were in 2009 when things were really in the tank, and that was the justification for the first temporary levy lid lift.
Another question? Want to go? Is there a question?
Scott's got a question.
Ed, I heard you said in the early 90s, county budget around low 40 millions. Looked like, Bob, you were nodding to that. Now we're talking about 50 million. At the last Kennedy Forum, I heard 54 was the number thrown out. I get to this kind of, is to both of you, but Bob, can you give us a big picture kind of thing? Why the 14 million increase over that time?
The largest increase that we've seen is in our healthcare cost and wages. That is the two major big factors. And just to maintain the county government. We've gone back to try to open up our doors so that we are open to the public at all times instead of restricting access to the public. And a lot of that has cost more money as well too. So most of it is, the majority of it is in labor and cost of living, and then also in medical.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that points to the fact that they've got a fundamental structural cost problem that they're not addressing. There is no doubt that the rate of government spending is increasing faster than the growth rate of the economy, and that just can't happen over the long term. That's unsustainable. So the way the county's addressing that is by reducing headcount. And so you'll see county headcount going down at the same time that county costs are going up. And so in part, they want the levy lit increase and other increases in revenue to make that work. But at the end of the day, they really have to get their heads around the fact that county government has to, at some point, be in line with the economic growth rate here. Otherwise, people's taxes are going to make up the difference and grow at a rate increased higher than the economic growth rate of the county.
Another question?
I think sometimes government funding is like a shell game in terms of how there's these different little pots that you can move money between certain pots but not between other kind of pots. I'm just kind of curious, if the levy fails, are the list of things that are being said or will be funded with it, are there other pots that could be, I'm not saying will be or there's sufficient, but is there ability to use other pots to meet the same identical goals? Does that make a sense?
Yes, it does. No, there aren't other pots to make up those differences. The reason that we're asking for this levy lid lift is to continue the funding of the programs that we are trying to fund that are not mandated. We do have mandated programs that we do have to fund, and we do have mandated spending that we can do out of some of the funds, but we can't transfer amongst funds for other projects. Some funds are earmarked to be spent specifically. I was getting hard to get that out. But specifically on programs. If we do not get the levy lid lift, we have enough to fund it. These funds will be funded through 2015, and then after that, we'll have to either drop the funds or come back and ask for the levy lid lift again. But I'm hoping that this will pass and we can have some stability to look into the future and hopefully do some long-range budgeting forecasts.
I know there is a part of the county that effectively went bankrupt a few years ago, and that's the solid waste system. And we heard the same thing about solid waste. Oh my goodness, it's going to be the end of the world. We need the money, we need the money, we need the money. Well, in the end, people said we're not going to give you any money anymore, and it wasn't the end of the world. They figured out another way. And that's the way I view this system. They can figure out another way. The cost increases are really just way out of line with everything else. And if they can't find enough money for this at 50 million, they're not going to find it at 54 million or 55 million or 56 million because they didn't find it at 43 million. And so again, it just seems like a situation where the only way they can really fundamentally deal with the problem is if you force them to, by saying no. You're always going to be asked for temporary increases, so you might as well stop the temporary increases now because they're going to ask for it at 60 million and 70 million too.
More questions? Don't want to miss the corner.
Yeah.
Want to try again?
I'll give it another try. Okay, the last thing I want to do is get into the CAO. I sat through enough of those meetings, and I don't think anybody wants to discuss that. I was using that as an example of there's a lot of waste in the county government because the council tends to pander to certain groups, and then at the end, they actually make a decision, which the whole thing was this huge loop that didn't have to happen. So my question is kind of separately, but for Ed, when you were one of those groups that fought and fought and fought and fought, and you now are saying the county doesn't need more money, but you guys were the trigger to wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Bob, the council, you weren't on it then, is not firm enough and tends to pander, like I said. So do you think you can save money by being a little more decisive?
We are constantly looking at more ways to be efficient. We reached out, we're the first council to reach out to other counties for shared resources. Through our public works, we're starting to share resources with Skagit County. When the issue came up about animal protection, I reached out and started to look to see what a contracting that services from another county would be. We're constantly looking to be more efficient in the county government with the present management that we have now, and I believe that we can be more efficient. There has been some deficiencies in the past, but I want to close those loops to be as efficient as possible. And sometimes it's a painful way to be efficient, but we're constantly looking at ways to save the taxpayers' money and be able to provide the services that we believe the taxpayers are asking for.
That was.
You know, as an advocate for a certain position, I am going to fight and fight and fight and fight. And I'm not going to really consider the cost implications of my right as a citizen to voice my point of view about things. And so I in some ways, see it as kind of distinct roles. But I was trying to answer before your question by saying that I don't think any position I've taken, no matter how much I've fought, has fundamentally led to the enormous increases in county budget that we've seen. It may be hundreds of thousands of dollars that you think I've cost the county, but I have no control over the county, how the county bundled the CAO. So, I mean, to a certain extent, regardless of what position I advocate, it's still the county's responsibility to spend its money wisely and to do it in a legal fashion. So, in any event, I don't really accept the premise that I've been the reason for this enormous increase or $1 million or anything like that.
Thank you. Any final questions? Oh. Okay, this will be the last question.
What we're being asked to vote on this year, can we expect to have to vote on it again in 2 more years or 4 more years?
If I remain in office for the next 5 years till this levy runs out, I hope, it'd be my sincere hope that we will not be able to ask for this again. I hope that we can get straightened out enough so we don't have to come back to the citizens to ask for more money.
Nobody can predict the future, but if the past is any indication of the future, yeah, absolutely, they'll be coming back in 4 or 5 years to ask for it. Like I say, 2000 for a temporary levy lid lift, and here they are back again, and they'll ask again and again and again, because, again, it's a temporary fix. It's always a temporary fix, and they really just need to buckle down and figure out what it is. But one of the things about the county that's hard is, how do you know $1 million is right? I mean, there's no metrics. There's no metrics for success. There's no metrics for whether they're spending too much or too little on things. I think this goes to the CAO question as well. How do you know we spent too much money? They don't know. And so if you don't have any metrics, you're always going to ask for more, and you're going to continue to ask for more until people finally say enough. We're not doing it. You're the metric. All you people out there, you're the metric. That's the only metric they have.
Thank you. And our final ballot proposition is San Juan County Public Hospital District Number 1, continuation of levy for EMS. And we have Katie Davies and Lenore Bayuk speaking for the pro side, and we have Bill Williams for the con. And on our schedule, Katie Davis will present first. Or Lenore will present first. Or one of the two, or both.
Good evening, thanks for being here. My name is Lenore Bayuk. I've been one of your hospital district commissioners for nearly 11 years. As a board, we oversee 2 tax levies. One is the levy that supports Peace Island Medical Center for medical services, and the other one is our Emergency Medical Services, or EMS, and that's the levy that we're addressing tonight. We are asking for a levy to replace our current levy. Our current levy is 35 cents on 1,000. We're asking to replace that levy with 50 cents on 1,000, and this would be a 6-year levy. It's not a levy lid lift. 10 years ago, we as a board decided to expand and upgrade our EMS services. We now have a highly trained group of paramedics, volunteer EMTs, flight nurses who all service our district 24/7. Our EMS is the only nationally accredited 911 agency in the state of Washington and one of a handful in the country. We are national award winners, leading the nation in patient satisfaction and cardiac arrest save rates. In recent years, due to a decrease in property valuations, EMS has experienced a significant decrease in tax monies to support the services that we provide. Since 2011, when our current levy took place, our tax loss has been totaled at $1.4 million. Additionally, with the changes in insurance reimbursement over the last 2 years, we have lost $711,000 in reimbursement fees. A yes vote on the EMS levy would, for example, cost a $300,000 homeowner an additional $45 a year. Less than a third of the entire EMS budget comes from taxes. Less than 50% of this budget is for payroll and benefits for over 40 people. The additional funds will provide for replacement of aging ambulances and equipment, as well as continued operations at current levels. One of our ambulances is 21 years old, the other one is going to be 20 years old in 2017, and they run on a 20-year cycle. So we really do need to upgrade and replace. The levy will allow EMS to maintain a zero out-of-pocket cost for our residents for ground and medevac services provided by San Juan EMS. It will maintain life-saving outreach and education programs that allow our residents to enjoy one of the best cardiac arrest save rates in the nation, free car seats and helmets, and a fall risk reduction program. It will provide partial funding for the 4 paramedics, 3 critical care nurses, 33 EMTs, 4 EMT support and operations staff, and 2 administration positions in the office.
Lenore?
Yeah, stop. Please vote for the EMS levy. We don't want to cut services.
Thank you, Lenore. Bill?
I want to start by saying, even though we're addressing Con, that we love and appreciate our EMTs who have helped so many of us. However, this discussion is not about that. It's about EMS administration asking voters to replace the last 2 years of the current 6-year levy with a new 6-year levy that would amount to a 42% increase and be the highest rate allowed by state law. We obtained and analyzed EMS budgets, financial data, workload data, for the past and current levy periods, and have extensively interviewed accounting and tax assessor personnel in order to determine if EMS statements to the public are accurate and if they do indeed need the increased levy they're requesting. We found property tax revenue has not decreased by 20% as stated in the EMS flyer, nor the 33% stated in the voter pamphlet. Property tax is up 12% in 2014 over what it was in 2010 when the current levy was passed. Call volume has not increased by 44% between 2011 and 2013 as stated in the EMS pamphlet and voter pamphlet. The call volume only went up 18% during that period, but more to the point, there's been a decrease in call volume of 5% in 2013 and another decrease of 5% in 2014, indicating a downward trend since the opening of Peace Island Medical Center. In a broader overview from 2010 to 2014, our review found tax income up by 12%, total income up by 141%, total expenses up by 145%, rising 4 times faster than the call volume. Call volume peaked in 2012 and has been decreasing since. We noted recent individual salary increases of 25%, 35%, and 63%, as well as the addition of 2 full-time administrative positions. EMS has posted a profit each year on this levy, and for 2014 they reported a total cash available of $1,167,591. There will be no EMS tax revenue loss of $4.2 million by 2016 as stated in the journal. In 2010, EMS administration made a wild forecast of what they hoped to get over the course of the current levy. Even in the first year, when it was abundantly apparent their estimate was way off, they never corrected it. Now they refer to the difference between their guess of how reality is played out as a loss. I'm sorry, but you can't lose something you never had. So in conclusion, we found inaccuracies and misleading information in the information presented to the voters. We did not find a need for the large levy increase requested. Voting no keeps our options open for further dialogue to see if workload continues its downward trend while revenues rise based on increased property values. We urge no on the vote.
Thank you. Now the questions. Got one back here, over next.
Other than the taxpayers' money that this levy is going to produce, is there any other EMS income coming in?
Is there any other EMS income what?
Coming in.
So, I'm Katie Davies, and the other income that we get, again, Lenore said that only about 30% comes from taxes. In 2009, when it was obvious that taxes, the assessments were going down, we worked very hard to try and figure out other ways to create income for EMS. And so we do have about 2/3 of our income comes from billing. Unfortunately, this year, we've been talking to our billing company, and income from our billing has been declining due to the new health law. That's the reason in February we were projecting that we were going to be needing to increase. And now we really do need to know, we really do need the increase to continue services and
Comments?
My name is Birgit Krita. Actually, the levy only provides 25% of the yearly total income that EMS is presenting in their budgets. So 3/4 of the money that EMS lives on comes from other sources, donations, other income from the collection of insurance monies, etc. So what we have seen in looking at the data is that in the last 4 years there has been an incredible increase in administrative salaries, going from approximately $250,000 to over $400,000. And going from as little...
Sorry.
That's okay.
That was a impressive review of the historical data that we heard from the Collins. I'm wondering if you'd like to respond to some of those charges, really.
Well, our call volume has gone down slightly in the last 2 years because of the ER up at the hospital. However, it's still at about 80, is it 84? 85%. 85% higher than 10 years ago. So it's been increasing steadily, and it did peak a couple of years ago, and it has gone down because of the ER. In terms of salaries, is that what you wanted me to respond to?
Yes.
Several people have taken salary cuts, and also several people are taking furlough days on a regular basis in order to manage this. One of the things that many people don't know is that you have no out-of-pocket costs as residents of the district, and we really would like to keep that. That may have to get cut if we can't get more income.
I don't know how any organization can justify a 77.3 increase over the last 4 years in administrative salaries alone. That's only salaries, that doesn't include benefits. There have been an increase in call volume that is actually calculated in a way that it demands attention. That 10 years ago, calls that were called as one call were then after that called as two calls. Furthermore, the incredible increase of salaries in a matter of 3 years of 18 to 63% is unrealistic, especially given the fact that we live on an island and you have to account for that as well.
Other question from the audience? Sorry.
How do you justify the increase in salaries?
Could you hear that?
Yeah, I did. I think it's really easy to take a line item out of a budget and to sort of make assumptions about it. In the last 3 years, we've created an Island Air ambulance where we had to hire, from mandates from the state basically, in order to keep our fixed wing service, we had to hire 3 people, and those 3 people are completely paid for by the insurance that we get from Island Air. So if you take them out of the budget, we have Pam Hutchins, who's the superintendent of the district, who we get money back from the hospital district, so you can take her out of the budget. I think we have less administration than the fire department has. I am the executive assistant. I run as the assistant chief, and I'm way more than a secretary. And our salaries are on par with the fire department.
If you compare, for example, let me say first that those 3 positions that Ms. Davies referred to were not part of the administrative budget. That was not calculated, it was simply administration. So just as one example, if, for example, the chief on Salmon Island makes $125,000 per year, the chief for EMS and fire on Orcas Island makes $96,000 a year. That's almost a $30,000 increase. Not increase, but difference. It might be argued that the call volume is lower down there, however, being chief of 2 organizations and demanding less money from taxpayers is significant.
Another question?
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry.
Well, you kind of asked already.
Okay. Pardon me.
I get the prize on the first question.
Yes.
I want to know, a lot of people have said that you guys increased the number of personnel you've had in the last few years, and I just wonder if you could tell us the numbers, like 4 years ago and now.
In the last 4 years, again, there's the 3 flight nurses that we had to hire that are not paid by tax dollars. We have 2, so we have the chief, we have me that sort of works as an assistant chief and the administration assistant. We have 2 operational people. The fire department has 3, and we have a prevention officer. None of those are new hires. So it does look like Pam came on right after the the medical center closed. But in order for her to get benefits, she's on our budget, and then we get reimbursed by the district for her. So really, we've had, because of the increase in call volume, we have 4 paramedics. I'm not quite sure what the additions are, except for the flight program.
The additions are the logistics officer who was hired in 2012 and the superintendent who was hired in 2013. The superintendent gets, out of EMS budget, received more than $54,000 last year and $55,000 this year. The remainder of his salary is paid by the hospital board. With regards to the flight nurses or any of those are not administrative positions, so they were not even part of the agenda. There are a lot of other expenses that have been added in order to get the budget to almost to more than $3.8 million, compared to about half of that back in 2010, and asking for even more money. A 42% increase in your tax contribution at this time is unreasonable.
Do we have any other questions?
Thank you. I'm Pamela Hutchins, and I am the superintendent of the Public Hospital District, and I just wanted to say that the superintendent is not a new position to the hospital district. It was under Island Medical Center, which I worked there also. The superintendent's salary, not one penny of it comes out of the EMS budget. The district, the hospital district, which hired me, reimburses EMS the total of wages and benefits.
Questions on that, thank you. Any other questions? Yes?
I guess this goes to Lenore. As a hospital board, a person who we elected to do what the citizens and taxpayers expect. I'm assuming that you get your information from EMS administration. Is there any reason why the board would not consider the information that Econ has to see if they're accurate at all?
Well, some of it is definitely inaccurate, and I will look at the sheet that they had out there. I have no reason to believe that what we are presenting is false. I mean, we go over that budget every month, line by line, and you've got to decide who you're going to believe, I guess.
Last week, we all received this flyer from EMS. I believe all of you have received that, or most of you at least have. In the back, it tells you how many calls the organization EMS responded to and what their tax loss was between 2011 and 2013. I have received all the information directly from EMS and calculated this. And they used different number of years for a large call volume compared to a high number of percentage loss due to tax revenue. You cannot compare apples and oranges. This is false information. Just like the 4.2 million that they stated they lost due to taxes between 2011 and 2016. That is inaccurate.
Thank you. Any final questions? Okay. It's a question, correct?
I don't think I have any answers. Just out of curiosity, this seems to be a permanent levy. It's based, how many years ago?
6 years.
6 years, okay. So during the 6 years, if assessed values go up and recover the loss that we had back through '09 or whatever, that means, if I understand correctly, your revenue from this will go up in direct proportion until the 6th year is up. Is that a reasonable assumption?
No, basically what happens is when the assessments go down, they can go down really fast. But at the end of the year, we can only take where they went down. We can only go up 1%. No matter where they are at the end of the year, how far they go down. If things went up really high, we could only go up that 1%.
Anyone who really wants to dig into that should talk to our tax assessor. The way this current levy is written, it's at 35 cents per thousand. It can't float up and down like other levies do because of the way it was written as a ballot measure. And therefore, it stays at 35 cents. And that's what's actually caused it to drop quickly because it can't be offset by a higher levy rate than 35, which it would have if it had been written the other way. But the same thing is true when it goes the other direction. It still stays at 35. So you'll see that if there's an increase in assessed values, there will be a big increase in revenue to EMS as well.
I have calculated the difference between the present levy and the 50-cent levy that EMS will receive next year. According to the 35 cents, it will be 1.04 million compared to $1.45 million.
Question? This will be the final one.
I win, Scott. You know, as a voter, I like to get the facts and then I decide what I want. You know, do I want the guy to come to my door quicker or do I want to pay a little less money to be simplistic? I can't tell who's right here. So how do we, the voters, get the right information? How do we know that those figures that were impressive are correct? How do we know, can you point us to websites that have this information? How can we get the information we need?
Yeah, I think, for one, I want to invite everybody to the San Juan County Public Hospital District meetings. They're on the 4th Wednesday of every month. This month it's on the 5th. And if you come to the EMS office, we can explain anything to you. I'd be happy to explain it. My chief would be happy to explain the reasons why and where we get all the numbers that we have. There's a website, yes4ems.org as well. And I'm going to put my own personal cell phone number and email out on the table, and you can go ahead and give me a call anytime. It's complicated. A lot of this is expected tax that the assessor told us we were going to get, which is what is used. And so, you know, you're budgeting with what you think you're going to get. And we're making decisions based on that. So it's really, again,
All the data we have were taken directly from the budgets that were supplied to us by EMS. All of the data that we presented, or many of them, are in a little pamphlet that I put out there with an email address that you can get. You can ask any questions you would like. You can get the data yourselves or all the budgets if you call EMS yourself. So you have the opportunity to look at everything yourself, at all the data, the ones that we have used. We have created all those diagrams. I have checked on a daily basis over the last few weeks with Mr. Zelmanek, who's the assessor, in order that the calculations are correct, and they are 100% correct.
Thank you. I'll turn the microphone back over to the President of the League of Women Voters of the San Juan Islands, Diane Martindale.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Let's give him a round of applause. behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank the candidates and speakers for their participation, and our thanks go to you, the audience, for your attendance and participation. Our next event is a joint meeting with the Prevention Coalition on November 14th at the San Juan Island Presbyterian Church at 11:30 to 2. It's free and you're all welcome. Be sure to vote on or before November 4th. Thank you.